everybody. It is Faith Artieda, and we are here today doing the Inside Barrett series. I am here with Scott Hothem. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott.
Thank you, Faith.
Yeah, we're really excited. So can you just tell us a little bit about, we know you're a pretty prominent figure at Barrett, so we would really love to hear kind of your role, how many years you've been at Barrett, and just a little bit about what you do.
And again, thanks for the opportunity. So I'm the SVP of Customer Solutions for Barrett, essentially the Chief Commercial Officer. So run the sales and marketing team for Barrett. Been with the company now 14 years, based up in the Boston area where our corporate office is, and have really seen just tremendous growth from when I started with the business, when we only had a handful of buildings in the New England area, and then have since grown to 22 buildings, really from New England out to California. So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you're up in the Boston area, right? So you're kind of at Barrett headquarters right now. I think everybody's kind of in Boston, right? That's awesome. So you are the SVP of sales, which is awesome. We love working with you. And so you have a lot of hands-on experience with all of the brands, and kind of most of the clients that we talk to, correct?
Our main industry verticals, we're in apparel and footwear, we're in health and beauty care, consumer products, consumer electronics, that type of thing. And just since I've been with the business, we've obviously grown our portfolio tremendously, more than, tripled our customer count. And obviously I mentioned the number of buildings that we're in, but even our service offering has changed, quite a bit over that period of time where, early on, we were probably a traditional, warehouse company doing, B2B services with, kind of pallet in, pallet out type of thing. And we've really sort of grown, from that and evolved into more of a full service, omnichannel 3PL. So where we're, handling, pure play direct consumer brands. We're still handling, a lot of B2B, but then, more and more brands that are in that multi-channel, right? B2B and retail our systems have also evolved over that period of time. So, to be able to handle retail compliance in addition to direct consumer fulfillment. So what my experience has really been that, we become a one-stop shop, right? For a lot of not only our legacy customers that have been with us for, 10, 20 years, but for those new brands that are, growing and expanding and want to, kind of find that, I'll use the term forever 3PL, right? They don't want to, start somewhere and then have to find a new 3PL as their business
Right.
grows and it changes. And there's been more than, a number of examples where, we get a phone call, like, with one of their sales guys just landed a huge, PO with Walmart. They're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to handle this? And like, we got you. Like, we'll walk you through it. We'll tell you how to handle it. And, that just gives brands a lot of comfort that there's really nothing they can't throw at us that we haven't seen.
Right. And that's a good problem to have, right? Like, you want the good problems to have.
Yeah,
So you
absolutely.
mentioned omnichannel. Could you tell us a little bit about that? I know some people who are kind of bigger brands that already have worked with the 3PL kind of know what that is. But for the people who are looking for a 3PL right now, or who are debating if they want a 3PL, what does that word mean, and how does Barrett use that?
There's probably a lot of different ways to describe it, but I would say, so for brands that maybe you're a pure play direct to consumer fulfillment brand, and you're servicing orders off of your own website, or you might be working through drop ship relationships or different marketplaces. But then there's the major retailers, so the Walmarts, the Targets, the Costcos, the Nordstroms of the world. That's a whole different ecosystem as far as like how the order profiles need to flow. It's likely more case pick and even more pallet pick. It could be direct to store deliveries. It could be direct to DC deliveries, whereas obviously the D2C is all delivery to residential addresses, right? So, and those channels are very, very different. How you manage inventory is different. Those retailers often want unique SKUs that you don't sell on your private D2C website. So it adds just another layer of complexity to their business, but it can also drive tremendous volume, right? Instead of a typical direct consumer order that might be, one or two lines and a couple of units on an order, a PO to Walmart could be tens of thousands of units, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. So brands can really scale their revenue and activity once they sign up with these retailers. But, there's obviously a lot more risk there as well with
Right.
chargebacks and all the different requirements that they have. So, brands can get into trouble really, really quickly if they don't really have 3PL partner that can handle, everything that a retailer is going to throw at them. And that's really where we've, I think, kind of demonstrated a ton of value in the marketplace for those brands that are making that switch or that evolution or that level up, going to more of a true omni-channel brand that they can rely on us to be able to service that business for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, what would you say is the first question every brand should ask when evaluating a 3PL? So, we talked about the omni-channel, kind of what that is, giving them a little bit of education. So, I really want to harp on what should they be asking. Obviously, there's the question of, do I need a 3PL? But we really want to get into kind of the nitty gritty. After they're like, okay, well, maybe I do need a 3PL. What's kind of the question they should be asking anyone they work with, whether it's Barrett or someone else?
Great question. I mean, because like again, 3PLs all have warehouses, forklifts, RF guns, everyone's got all that kind of stuff. But for me, like if I was a brand, one of the questions I would ask is like, hey, tell me about some of the customers that are like me, right? So if I'm a direct to consumer apparel brand, you talk to me about some of the other brands that you service that are like me and what you're doing for them, where you're doing it, any of the challenges that they had and the problems that you were able to solve. And the same thing if I'm like, hey, I'm looking to get into, we're expecting a large order from Walmart. Give me some examples of brands that you work with, that you're servicing Walmart, and kind of tell me how you manage that and how you handle it. But more importantly, like as the brand, if I'm the brand owner, me and my team need to be prepared to successfully have a relationship with a mass retailer, right? Just because I think about things in terms of like, problems and solutions at the end of the day. We're as much consultants to a lot of these companies as a fulfillment and 3PL and warehouse provider. We're solving problems every single day, and whether some of our technology and automation solutions to solve issues, solve problems, or to get more efficient and increase throughput, or even deploying it kind of just new ideas and new concepts. We get curveballs thrown at us all the time. That's what
Right.
makes the day to day exciting, is that there's no day is ever the same, and we really thrive on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that answer because it's so informative. I think with choosing a 3PL from any company, especially if you're a newer company, it can be really overwhelming. So I know that it's a lot for Barrett because we try to educate people a lot on the
It's a really
3PL.
great point, is that it can be overwhelming, and there's frankly, there's no shortage of choices out there in the market, right? There's startup 3PLs that have only been around for a couple of years. There's more mature brand 3PLs like us, been around for, it's hard to imagine, but 8 decades, third generation privately held company that is really still, growing at a really rapid rate after 80 years of business. And I think that says a lot too, that our experience over that amount of time, there's almost like nothing we haven't seen. There's no customer that we haven't worked with. There's no retail. We're working over 65 different retailers now. And I think, so I think a lot of these startup 3PLs that, maybe could be more, inexpensive than we are, cheaper, could be, a bit more flashy, but at the end of the day, it's a little bit like the turtle that wins the race, right? I mean, we've been
Yeah.
around, and we're going to be around here a lot, probably longer than some of the other, competitors might be. I mean, the one thing that I love, having worked for other 3PLs and now having been here for 14 years, is, the owners of the business, really run it in a really responsible way, right? You've got literally no debt on the balance sheet, growing at 20% a year. And we're reinvesting, tens of millions of dollars back into our company every year in capital investment into facilities, into new technology, into automation. And frankly, there's a lot of 3PLs out there that can, barely make payroll month to month, right? Let alone being able to really invest for the
Right.
term. I think that's why brands stick with us. That's why, we get, renewals on our contracts, and our customer relationships tend to be long term and really not transactional. I think that has a lot to do with why we've been around for so long and have seen the success that we are.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've talked about with Barrett as well in the past, and one thing that we love to, talk to clients about is like if they're not a good fit for us, if they're not a good fit for us, we're not afraid to say, maybe you should try somewhere else. You're not ready for Barrett yet. So how would you explain that? If a client's coming to you, what is the trust factor from Barrett?
So when a brand's coming to us, frankly, they're as much interviewing us as we're interviewing and evaluating them, right? We're looking for long-term partners. We're certainly, if a brand is just looking for the lowest cost, we may not be the right option for them. And we go pretty deep. We ask a lot of questions, and we dig deep on profiles, and we ask a lot of questions. And there's certainly, a lot of brands that were startup brands that came to us, and we really evaluated the ownership structure, maybe the history of the founders. And we've partnered with brands early on when they're literally shipping a couple of hundred orders a day, to the point now where those brands are generating, $1, $2, $300 million in revenue, and they've stayed with us the whole time. So,
Awesome.
those are the kind of relationships we love, right? We get in early, we can provide a solid logistical foundation for them, and they can just scale their brand and focus on product and sales, and not have to worry about,
Yeah.
so those are the relationships that we really thrive
Yeah,
with.
and so price isn't everything. I know that's the big question for everybody that talks, to anybody. I mean, everyone wants to know what the price is. What are some things that may be overlooked in that process when you're looking for a 3PL, for people who are in that process of interviewing, or the process of you guys interviewing the client? What other topics are sometimes overlooked that Barrett kind of brings to the forefront?
Don't get me wrong, price is important, right?
Yeah.
There's no way around it. And we're maybe a little bit unique in the fact that we don't offer price sheets. If somebody asks me, can you give me a price today? Typical answer is, no, probably not. We need to learn, understand your profile, because even though a brand might be in the same apparel direct to consumer space, everyone's profile is different, right? It's how many SKUs they have and different things that affects, how we price a particular piece of business. We really develop customized solutions. So the sales team will dig in, get a lot of profile information, sometimes work with our ops and engineering team to dig in on solution design, which informs our staffing models and space requirements and capital. And then we price that opportunity. So when we put a proposal back in front of a brand, they know we've actually thought about it. We actually understand the uniqueness of their business. And that may be very, very different if they're looking at a price sheet that someone's given them with just a menu of options that, is fairly generic and is really not customized to them. And frankly, could be cheaper on paper than what we're proposing. But there are numerous examples of brands that we went through that exercise with. They decided to go with the cheaper guy. And then a year or two later, they call us up, they email us back and say, hey guys, I'd like to re-engage. We actually made a mistake, and we didn't get what we
Right.
thought we were going to get, and they come back to us. So, and sometimes for those customers, when someone walks away, you kind of have a thought like, you know what, they're not a customer of Barrett's right now, but they will be in the future. Like we just know they'll be back.
Yeah, and I think, talking about all of that and talking about like the technology and warehouses and stuff like that, I know a lot of different 3PLs are integrating a lot more AI. So I know that from my experience, what I've heard with other people interviewing them and, hearing about the sales side of things, most people who are looking for a 3PL are kind of being met with AI as soon as they submit an inquiry. And so how does Barrett kind of differ with that? Because I know we're very, like you said, we've been around for 80 years. You've been at the company for a long time. With AI coming into the picture and people kind of using it as their sales team, how does Barrett's sales team kind of differ from that?
It's interesting because AI is obviously moving so quickly. It's the buzzword of the day. There's certainly a lot of hype around it, and I think, personal opinion, it remains to be seen kind of how quickly it's really going to roll out and be effective. Now, as Barrett as a company, our IT group is using tools, with AI in their programming and their development work and different things. We've got a lot of different pilot programs kind of running internally within the business, but we're absolutely sort of going a bit slow with, kind of how we adopt AI. But
Yeah.
but the one thing that's clear is that, more and more consumers are using AI tools as like a search engine, right?
Mhm.
So like we've had to adopt our marketing team to make sure that the website is visible with AI searches. But the one thing we'll never do is use like an AI agent to respond to a customer that's looking for questions about, hey, can you help me with your business? Like I think that's the worst customer experience anybody could ever get. And we're all about the personal connection. Brands are making often multi-million-dollar decisions and I would never let like a chatbot, be the first connection that
Yep.
the brand has to Barrett. It's just not who we are. It's not what we do. Maybe 10 or 20 years down the road when it actually, is proven out and would add some value. But at this point, it's way too early to
Yeah.
adopt something like that.
Yeah, and I think customers, I mean, all the feedback that we get is Barrett is very people focused, you know? I think no matter what process you're going through, you're connecting with somebody who is just 100% on your side and 100% for Barrett. I know in your sales team, most of the people on your team have been here for over 10 years. Um,
Says a lot too, because you do find in our industry, there's historically maybe a lot of turnover. I think the one thing you'll find is that the average, I think, Barrett employee has been around for like 7 years. My sales team over 10, once, and I think that says a lot about just sort of the Barrett culture and, in the fact that, we do thrive on those customer interactions. And as a salesperson, you're putting your reputation on the line when you make commitments to a brand about, who we are, what we do, and what we can do for you. And, I never want to, have a situation where someone feels like they were overpromised and we under delivered on that. And that just comes with experience, right? And I'm really understanding the brand, the business, and kind of what their requirements are. And then, making sure that we develop a proposal and a solution that's going to meet those needs and exceed their expectations. So that's what we strive for, every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been here for a short time, and I've already seen the difference with Barrett and other 3PL companies. I'm not really well versed in the 3PL space, but in the connections that I've made and the research that I've done, I've really seen that Barrett is very people focused, and you can really feel that 80-year, establishment. You can really feel the pride everybody has for Barrett. You know,
Thing I would say is like one of our owners, Tim Barrett, like one of his just sort of internal goals. I mean, obviously, running a very successful business and sort of, a little bit been there, done that. But he really now, where we've got, 1,200 employees, it's about, how can he improve the lives of a lot of the staff that works for us, right? And there's, we end up promoting dozens of people a year internally. So whether, an associate moves up to a lead or a lead moves to a supervisor or a supervisor moves to a manager or service person moves to a customer service manager. There's so many examples internally of upward mobility that the staff has. And, obviously, as someone gets promoted, they've got a family, they're making more money. And that's where, Tim really feels like, if he can, there's a little bit of like, you got, 1,200 employees, but those employees have families. So really, there's, potentially, over like 10,000 people that could be positively affected, right? Just by the work that we do every single day. And how we treat our employees is a massive part of our success. We couldn't do it without them. And that's why, our whole team just takes a lot of pride in kind of building that Barrett culture, which frankly, I think culture, kind of beats strategy all day long. And I think our culture has just shown that, for long term, and having been out there now for 8 years, coming up on 90 years, and we'll keep on going strong. So.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's another thing with the 3PL industry. I mean, people only care about, some companies only care about the corporate side of it, and they're not really worried about the warehouse workers or the people that are working, admin in the warehouses. And that's one thing that I've seen is that, Barrett, like you said, cares about everybody. The people that are handling your packages, the people that are, doing the hard work, the people that are doing the hard work behind the scenes in the corporate side, doing the sales side. Everybody is doing an equal job of just making this business run phenomenally.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the one thing I would say about that too is like, and I would just say compared to maybe some in our space or competition, in our warehouse production environment, we're typically 70 to 80% Barrett full-time employees and maybe 20-30% temps that we use for seasonal spikes and volume, that kind of thing. I do know the business model for other 3PLs is just the inverse, right? They run 70 to 80% temp with maybe 20 or 30% full-time staff managing that temp workforce. And our experience has been that the customer experience is better when we've got a higher ratio of Barrett employees. It's a more cost-effective option. We have less turnover, more employee engagement. And that model has really worked well for us. And I think the other side of it too is, Barrett is it's an open book, what we call an open book company. So we subscribe to something called the Great Game of Business, where we kind of share the financials with all the employees, every month, every quarter, and employees get bonused on a monthly and a quarterly basis, based on company results. So the whole idea is like we really want them to think like an owner, and a lot of that just has to do with day-to-day execution, shipping on time, shipping accurately, reducing overtime, things like that. But I think over the past 10 years or so, employees, could realize or have been realizing, DGOB bonuses of, two, three, $1,000 a year, right? Which is substantial money. And I think Tim had mentioned that, over the history of this program, that we've paid out, like well over $20 million
Yeah,
in profit sharing to employees. So it's huge. And it's frankly, it's a differentiator for us in the marketplace to be able to recruit and retain staff. And I think when people join Barrett, like in the warehouse, we hear it over and over again, like, man, it's just different here. It's just such a nicer work environment than maybe where I came
absolutely.
from. And they tell their friends come to work for us. So I mean, it's a bit of a virtuous cycle that we're going to try to continue.
Yeah, and you guys are doing an awesome job at it. You guys were just at a warehouse too, so you guys are always boots on the ground, not just staying in offices, you guys are there. And, it's phenomenal because
Yeah.
most people, again, with our competitors, you'll see that it's kind of a separate between the warehouse and the corporate side, whereas Barrett kind of integrates both of them and you guys are always, with the employees.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're an operating company, right? We we receive goods, we put goods away, we pick and we ship, and you could on the surface that sounds pretty simple, but not everybody can do the basics, really really well, and we just really try to do that better than the other guy, and that just drives not only just profitability for the company, but customer satisfaction, and that's really what kind of keeps us going.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate you coming on this call. I appreciate you talking to us. And I'm excited to hear more from you, hopefully in the future, about the inside of Barrett and your side of things.
Faith, it was great to talk to you. Appreciate it.